I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk with folks from the VTuber community on their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. We are joined by Orpheus Gensui. Hi.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, appreciate you coming on. Please introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Orpheus Gensui. I'm a variety streamer with a variety sense of humor. I recently got over a case of being dead. Sometimes I go by the OG Revenant streamer, and happy to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It's congratulations on getting over being dead. Not very many people can say they've done that.
It was a bit of a Faustian bargain, but we'll get to
that. Yeah, it usually is. Just about everything these days becomes a Faustian bargain by the time you're done with it. When did you get started with the VTubing thing?
Right after Hololive's English Holostars came out, actually. It was like, oh, well, if they can do it. So I contacted a buddy of mine who was an artist. It was like, do you want to father another VTuber child? He said, yep. And I was streaming about 2 months later in January.
Wow. So was
it? I think that was 2023 that I started.
Was that a smooth start for you, or I mean, were you ready to go when you turned the mic on?
You think you are, or at least I thought I did. No, so I was doing stuff like balancing sound settings and futzing with overlays, transitions, and all that for years now.
Yeah.
But as far as like being prepared to be in front of an audience, I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Professionally, I've been in front of people worth, millions of dollars, and I don't care what Twitch chat thinks anymore.
Yeah, after that, I would kind of not be not be that much of a problem.
If I don't make this sale for this guy, then I'm fired. Cool. And like, okay, if I don't impress Twitch chat, then I see the number go down a little bit. It's fine.
Well, I mean, I imagine I could ask you this about that. I mean, we'll talk about here, but
sure.
Dealing with folks that are in that position, how easy is that for you? Do you have to kind of elevate your game, elevate how you talk with them, and how elevate your language, appearance, everything, or are you able to kind of break it down and speak to them on an even plane?
No, that's a very good question. So in my previous life, first life, I sold software, and it would depend a lot on who you're talking to. There was a company nearby that really valued all the things you just said, dressing up, wearing a suit. They wouldn't even let you in if you weren't wearing a tie, and they had ties like for loan at the front counter. In case you came in to embarrass yourself. And like you could tell that like everyone was going to judge you if you had the loaner tie. I had my own tie for this. I want to stress.
Yes.
But then sometimes you're selling to other like fellow nerds, and they really appreciate you showing up in a Persona graphic tee and some jeans, and then talking to them like they're
It's
more than a wallet.
Yeah, it's a very.
So it depends a lot.
Yeah, it's a very different type of interaction than when you're doing like an interview or even going online, because you're talking about you have to be very specific to the individual you're talking to, and you have to adapt to what they're expecting and what they're wanting, rather than necessarily presenting what you're comfortable with.
True, and it was always better to err on the side of fancy. It's easier to dress down in like, oh, I've overdressed, I'll take off my tie and jacket, then I'm way underdressed, I have to explode, I guess, because you have no other choice. And you impression.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, if I'm so I never did anything like that, but of course I was doing the radio thing, and it's a lot easier on that side because they're not expecting anything other than being talked to rather than a business transaction. So I can kind of break down a little bit and talk a little bit more person to person rather than entity to entity, like sales folks have to do a lot. Um,
No, and I'm really glad to be out of it. Honestly, it
yeah,
was exhausting in a lot of wrong ways.
yeah, oh yeah. I can imagine the pressure is intense, and whether the sale worked or not, the pressure is still intense. Um,
Yeah.
so did that kind of I want to say desensitized because that's not a good way to put it, but did that make it easier for you to get in front of a VTuber audience?
I feel like it is though, because it is a good word,
Mm,
because it absolutely did.
well,
The first time, uh, you hit go live and uh, your VTuber dad shows up and he's the only person uh, that it's easy to talk to him.
yeah,
I'm gonna say conversely, for a while, it was really hard for me to start out because I was like half expecting an audience to be there, and I just had to talk to myself.
yeah,
So when
yeah.
there's very little chat interaction, that's actually much harder for me.
Ah, so you'd rather have a few people you can bounce off of as you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, some people it is easier that way to do it. When you're doing something, playing an intensive or an attention intensive game online, can you still bring in that chat with you, or is it a little harder that way?
I'm gonna say I can, and I have evidence to support that I can. So for my last birthday stream, I did rock bands, and I did both the vocal part and the guitar part,
Yeah,
and I still was able to read chat for large portions of it.
yeah.
Um, Someone said that their toxic trait is pretending that they can do it as well as I was doing it, and I have to live with that pressure now.
Yeah, it's a different sort of pressure, isn't it? I mean, with what you were doing before, it's there's a pressure to represent somebody else, and you've got pressure from both sides, the customer and who you're representing. Here, the
Hmm.
pressure is on you and doing something to entertain and keep an audience. It's I mean,
Yeah, it's a
it's
different.
a different
It's
type.
very
It's still
different.
pressure, but it's a different type of pressure. And and being live, I mean, you have to own it. No matter what
Yeah, tripping over
happens.
your own words is.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to be relatively well spoken, and I don't
Well,
like slip over myself that often while live.
well,
It's
extremely
it
well
is a
spoken.
blessing.
I mean, it's a great voice you have for this, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And I've told this to folks before, but you've got one of those voices that has no sharp edges. That
I think that's part of why I got scouted for the position I did as well in sales.
yeah,
Is uh, people don't mind listening to me,
yeah, yeah.
and there's also I've heard a couple times that my streams are comfy, and I even like try to do pranks on my chat. For a while, I was streaming the Mortuary Assistant, and I called it More Too Comfy,
More to come.
and it was just me playing Mortuary Assistant, being as unspooked as a human being can be. Uh,
That's
I, I remember at one point I was like, "Oh no, they're just like cats. Look, there's a devil or there's a demon or whatever under the
yeah,
desk, and you make direct eye contact with him, and he runs away. It's
yeah.
exactly like having a cat.
Yes, it is very much like having a
Isn't this
cat.
comfy, chat?"
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
anyway, so
That's great. That type of self awareness you can't buy. That's really. I mean, there's some folks who just kind of have a natural instrument in their voice to be able to kind of soothe the situation and keep an audience with you. Um, have you have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've had to kind of work at that, or has it been natural for you since you have this voice?
uh, I'm gonna pretend it's natural, and then also note that I was in choir for most of my school life, and
Yeah.
I did win in several like state competitions while I was
Ooh.
in choir. So that's probably a lot of work that I'm not properly acknowledging. But no, I just sound this great, baby.
Clip that. Just put that under your logo. I just sound this great, baby.
I just sound like this.
Put that on a T-shirt, sell it. That'd be perfect. Um,
My first merch, yeah.
yeah. Well,
So
yeah.
it's funny you said that because I also, when we were designing this, I also just look like this. So I'm planning on going to TwitchCon, and I imagine a couple people I know who are also going are going to be like, "Oh, that's Orpheus. He looks like an Orpheus."
There's going to be no hiding for you anywhere.
No, unfortunately not.
Well, I mean, this is
It was intentional though.
yeah.
If you're familiar with the V Sojo talent Kason,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
it was kind of inspired by her that she was a VTuber and then was just like, well, it looks like me, and she just looks like that.
Yes.
So if I want to make that switch to the non VTuber realm, I'm sure you've heard the term flesh tubing
Yeah,
before.
I have, but
I can do that pretty easily.
I try not to actually use
No,
that word.
it's extremely terse, isn't it?
Yes. As in, my wife will be hearing from the other room, "What are you doing in there?" No, I'm not. No, don't worry about it. No, I try to stay away from that particular word, but I know what you're talking about. It and it makes it easier if you did some other type of a stream that is just me. I mean, if you were going out and doing a live cam somewhere, yeah,
Mhm.
it opens up a few more opportunities for you. Um,
Yeah, and I wanted to leave that open
yeah,
when I was designing the character.
yeah. A little less technology you have to use
That is true.
when that comes around. But I mean, you were in the tech side of things. Was it easy for you to come up with the equipment to do this?
Uh, Relatively. The microphone was the hardest part, actually.
Mm.
But uh, I had a relatively high-end computer. It still handles everything. It's old as hell now, but
Y2K
maybe I should say old
compliant?
as heck now for the edit.
Y2K compliant?
I hope so. But it's getting to be 8 years now, but it still handles most of the things I want to throw at it pretty well.
Yeah.
Although I noticed in a stream recently that I need more RAM.
Uh,
Um, and I already had the webcam because when uh, COVID-19 was a thing, I had to work from home.
oh yeah,
So
yeah,
I already had that.
yeah.
Um, it was just attached to my laptop, which was
Mm.
anyway. So relatively easily. Also because of the sales thing, I was used to editing videos and I'd used OBS
Right,
before.
right.
Uh,
And
so OBS and actually I can't remember the name of the video software. Doesn't matter. I used other video editing software before as well.
yeah,
So most of that was pretty easy to get into, but
yeah.
a lot of the
A lot of the a lot of the equipment was already there, or you pretty much
yeah, a
yeah,
lot of it was already around.
yeah. So I got to ask
It
you
was stuff I was used to.
about the microphone because of the tone of your voice, a lot
Mhm.
lower than mine. Normally, I'm in that range where I can just grab a whatever microphone, and that isn't necessarily super high or low, and I can pretty much hit the middle of it. Yours is on
Mhm.
the low side, so did you have to get us a special microphone to handle that and make it sound right, or
No, but I'm still dealing with the consequences of my actions.
uh
This is just a blue Yeti
huh
that I have a boom arm for
right
with a pop filter,
oh
and I still hear it in my own clips. It'll peak,
mm,
or maybe peak isn't the right word, but no, it's difficult to get it to pick me up if and also do like the background filtering I want it to,
right
and I don't think I've hit that sweet spot yet.
yeah it I call it a squelch because it'll you hit a certain peak and it doesn't read anything at all, and then it comes back to it.
Yep.
It's a strange for people who haven't used microphones. It doesn't make any sense when I say stuff like that. But
No, no, I absolutely encounter that
yeah,
and was encountering that on a streamly basis when I first started out.
yeah, microphones are very intricate instruments sometimes, and if you get the wrong microphone, if you go out and spend a lot of money and get the wrong microphone, you're just absolutely screwed because that's not going to work.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things too that people can do that isn't going to cost a lot of money that can help them out. I mean, a little sound buffing, carpet on the walls type of thing. It may look weird and sound weird, but it works. Um, not
True. I have a fairly busy room. I like collecting
mm, yeah,
stuff. We can get into what kind of stuff.
yeah,
Uh, so I don't have much of an echo in here.
yeah,
But
yeah,
no, everything Eric just said is correct.
yeah.
You chatter hearing the conversation right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
He's right.
yeah, I'm talking directly in front of a window, which is really terrible, but it's still. But you don't want to do
Ouch.
that. But it's there's as long as you have something that will reflect and buffer the sound around you, it does make a big difference. So I mean, this just a little thing can make a difference. But if you were doing some singing, it would make you really do need a better microphone. I mean, you
True,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
and
I participated in a V2 choir, and that I had to use completely different recording software for that.
mhm.
Where I used oh shoot,
if you if you stay
Eric, you'll have to
Audacity,
edit this part out.
yeah,
It was Audacity. Thank you.
yes,
I had to use Audacity and tweak some settings instead of
yeah,
using OBS
yeah,
because the filtering made me just sound terrible.
mm, mm,
Um,
yeah. I use Audacity because it's a lot like what I used in radio. In the last couple of years I was in there. Um, it's very easy for me to pick up how to work it. There's a lot more complicated things out there, and a lot more. If you spend some money, you can find some that will work better. But for what I'm doing, Audacity's fine.
yeah,
Um,
I try not to touch Audacity as much as I can, to be honest. It's intimidating.
well, there's a few bells and whistles on it I really like, but you got to find the one that's right for you. And this is the thing too. When I'm editing, I'm just doing the audio edits. You've got to edit
Mhm.
video as well when you're doing some of these things. Um, how tough is it? Did you already know about how to do the video editing when you started, or was it something that you learned along the way?
Both.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely both. So I use different software now, DaVinci Resolve,
Hmm.
and if I don't, if I'm editing like a stream VOD down, that's more time consuming than anything because I do a technique that everyone does that I don't think has a name, but basically you pass through it 3 times where you just cut down all the boring stuff and then you cut down what's still boring, and you do that 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
Um,
Keep going, keep going, keep
and
cutting.
it's really time consuming
Yeah.
because you have to scan the whole VOD 3 times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You make
That
lots of
that's easy
notes
enough.
too.
If I'm making content that I've scripted and putting stuff together for,
Yeah.
then that's I'll say much less time consuming if not much easier, uh, because of the familiarity with the tools.
Yeah. Yeah. It would behoove some folks to get some familiarity with what you're working with before you turn the microphone on. So you don't.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you.
I did a couple private streams before I turned
Yeah.
it on.
Yeah. And but once you get settled into something, and you've played around with it and get to learn it inside and out, then you can probably do some things you didn't even know you could do when you started. I had a big giant board in radio that was absolutely beautiful. So many buttons and sliders and things. And I worked overnight by myself. And by golly, after a year or two, I knew everything that board could do. And I got to play with it. If you play with it a little bit, then you're going to find out what that board could do for you. Um,
Yeah, and I really like that philosophy actually.
yeah.
It's kind of this is gonna sound weird, but it's how I build software and how I play video games. Like I
Mhm.
want to know what my options are
Yeah.
because if you know what your options are and you get good at them, then that's what makes you actually better
Yeah. Yeah.
at these things.
Yeah.
Um,
It's always good to know more
so
than
yeah,
need.
exactly, absolutely.
Yeah.
It helps you to know more.
Yeah. We had so many times in radio where even when you had the old 1980s, which is a lot different than the 2000s version of radio,
Mm,
you needed to know what your second backup plan was, what your third backup plan was, and what your fourth backup plan was, because it could fall off that quickly if you're doing a remote broadcast. And then
uh-huh.
you can go smoothly from one to the next to the next. Um, is that way too with with programming these days, or is it a little more cut and paste?
Ooh. Um, I'd say it's more cut and paste
Well,
if you're gonna ask me for an off the cuff answer.
well,
Um, there's a lot of frameworks that can help you get that up and running doing that cut and paste
hmm
early and often. That's not to say there isn't like code you're gonna have to write from scratch,
hmm
but certainly like getting a website up these days is pretty easy from scratch.
yeah, it was during the '90s too, but it wouldn't last very long, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You
I
get
remember having to I remember having to code in HTML.
oh yeah, we just get the templates and go with that, and hopefully your picture ends up in the right place.
I'm gonna date myself by saying I've used Dreamweaver software before.
Oh, oh, geez. Well, I'll date myself by saying that my first computer I programmed on was a Commodore 64 and an
Ooh,
Atari 2, um, an Apple 2, I should say, which
yeah, you
had
got
this.
me beat.
I mean, those have the same basic language. So
Mhm.
I was programming on that, but nowadays I have no idea what language you guys are speaking. And I'll let you handle the programming. I'll just wreck it and play it at
That's
this
fair
point.
enough.
So with that background, and when you're playing a game and you have the software background, obviously, does that affect how you enjoy a game when you're playing it?
Probably. You know what? Even definitely. I try to engage games as an interactive art more than a series of ones and zeros, even if I know they are.
Mm-hmm.
So like even though I know the technical explanation for invisible walls in Super Mario 64, I don't usually worry about them. I am fascinated by some game bugs, uh, and like I'll try to imagine how they work, but otherwise, no. If I'm playing, I don't know, Persona 5, I want to turn my brain off
Yeah.
and play Persona 5 and
Oh yeah,
talk
absolutely.
about the artistic decisions they've made. And I shouldn't say turn my brain off because
Oh, I know what you mean, though. I mean,
that belies the
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
you want to turn off the analyzation side and turn on the enjoyment side, and just
yeah,
play. I guess I tell people like I go watch a movie like Transformers 2. I'm not looking for Shakespeare. I'm looking for things to blow up. And it blew up, so I
yeah.
enjoyed myself. And that's you,
No, that reminds me of my mom's metric of a good movie, which is she didn't think about work.
yes, exactly.
If she didn't think about work, it's a good movie.
That's perfect. That's a great way to look at it. Um, so at this point, is it a fun hobby for you? Is it something that you're wanting to turn into a career, this VTubing thing, or are you kind of at a crossroads with it?
Uh, Unfortunately, the answer is both. I do really enjoy doing this
Mm-hmm.
3, 4 times a week when I can.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of the situation for everybody. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about hard numbers on
Absolutely.
this interview.
Anything you want.
Um, there's no way I can pay the bills unless I have like 2 orders of magnitude more followers.
Mm-hmm.
And like I can't even. It takes like 3 months to buy a video game based
Right.
off Twitch subscriptions.
Yeah.
So right now it's a hobby. I would love to turn it into a full job, but at my current rate of growth and how much Twitch pays
Yeah.
for someone of my size, it's just not feasible.
Yeah. And let's face it. If you were working with people who have lots of zeros in front of the dot as opposed to after the dot in your jobs before, you probably used to a lifestyle that has a few more bills that you have to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean it's and that's something that I don't think people take into account is that whether no matter where you're starting off at, whether you're in a shack somewhere or whether you're in a 3-story house in the suburbs, um,
Mhm.
you're going to make the same amount of money if you have the same amount of followers.
Yeah.
There's no
And I don't want to get it twisted because even if my current sub count is good for like one really nice lunch
Yeah,
once a month, that doesn't matter. I'm extremely happy that I hit double digit follower or viewer counts,
yeah,
and that enough people find me entertaining enough to tune in on a regular basis,
yeah,
even without announcements. Like I posted no schedules some weeks, and people still show up, and that does mean a lot.
yeah. What does that
But
do for
you,
you? I mean, it's got to be a an affirming situation when you realize that people are tuning in specifically for you.
it is, yeah, absolutely. But again, for my money, subscribe because you want the emotes, not because you think you're paying my bills.
Well, you subscribe because you're supporting somebody that you enjoy.
That's
And
fair.
that's the biggest thing. And if you can, I mean, or support by turning them on and leaving them on all the stream. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Um, you need to get that average stream up to average number of listeners, watchers. I always say listeners because I'm an old radio guy, but
I know what you mean.
watch your listeners that need to go up too. And there's
No, I definitely have my fair share of listeners.
yeah,
I have a couple people that I'll see very rarely, but they whenever they chat, they have the uh, not watching, just listening icon that Twitch has,
yeah.
um, and it's always there. So I'm pretty sure they click it and then they do their chores or whatever, and um, come back to say, streamer man, do the funny. Uh,
Yeah, I'm turning in
but
my
they're not
tips now.
actually watching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all counts. It all counts in the
No,
numbers
I
at the
value
end.
those people too.
Yeah.
Again, you're choosing to spend precious time with me as someone who's been dead. That means the world.
This when you I'm trying to get the right words for this. When you got started doing the streaming,
Mhm.
how long did it take for you to realize that first of all to get kind of a few folks that were literally following you, and then to realize that they were following because of you and not because of what you were doing?
Uh, Months.
Really?
Probably. Yeah, probably like 6 months. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, I had so the funny thing about my name. I didn't think about Persona at all when I
mm,
chose it.
yeah.
Uh, but I streamed Persona 3
Mm,
portable when that came to Steam,
right.
and so I did that for weekends for a while.
Mm,
And some people would show up and chat about the game with me, and it was my first time playing it.
mm,
Uh, and they kept showing up on weeknights after that, and that was the time I remember like, oh, they're showing up at a very different time slot
yeah.
for very different content. They must be here for me,
Yeah.
and that was affirming, like you
Yeah.
keep saying.
Was it also a little bit of pressure?
Uh, I keep using weasel words, probably, but not in a way I acknowledge, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
It's nice that they're there, and I feel guilty if I have to skip a stream for whatever reason,
Hmm.
but I don't feel the pressure to like when I'm hovering over start broadcasting, I
Right.
don't feel like I can't hit the button,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. I figured that I'm thinking about what I would do in the situation. I would start getting a little bit like I have to do this because they're waiting for me.
Mhm.
That type of thing. You kind of start feeling responsible for their enjoyment. Um, and I know some folks have had that where it kind of takes away from their enjoyment of streaming. Um, it doesn't seem that like it's
Yeah, I can
happening to
definitely
you
see
though.
that.
I don't think that's. It doesn't sound like that's happening to you though. Um,
Maybe a little. I met a couple people doing this where let me back up. For a while, I did have a VOD channel and I was uploading streams to it.
uh-huh.
And candidly, nobody watched them. So I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And the YouTube channel just became for like stuff that I had edited on purpose
Right.
to be up there.
Yeah.
And then one of my someone I met doing this, and that they're a streamer, asked me where the censored are your VODs, Orpheus,
Yeah.
and I started putting them back up because someone asked, and
Yeah.
sure enough, they get a view now,
Yeah.
and so that does go back to what you're describing though, of like, yeah, I do kind of feel like some people are watching just because they want to watch me, not because I'm
Yeah.
what's on.
Yeah. I
But that I don't think that again really
it would qualify as
has that
pressure
pressure of
then.
going
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's to me, I would think that having a VOD up, and again, it's always all of this stuff is your mileage may vary because it's different for everybody. Um,
Hmm.
would kind of help, especially when you're talking time zone differences. Um, because I mean, most folks don't want to stream at different times every day to different audiences. And there's it might be tougher for someone in the United States to get a group from Japan to watch, or somebody in Germany to get a group from Australia to watch. Um, and there's and the time zones do make a difference. I would thought that maybe it would create an audience that way, and maybe that would bring them to the stream. I know that works
Uh,
with shorts sometimes.
yeah, my personal experience with uploading VOD content is that's not what happened.
Mm,
I was uploading shorts for a while. I actually have my channel open right now.
mm,
My two most popular have 494 and 51 views, and I think I got one follower on Twitch for each of those.
mm. Well, I mean that's one.
So they didn't really trans. No, it's one, and
Yeah,
like if number go up, great.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if anything, doing this for this long has tempered my expectations of like how quickly anyone can expect to accumulate followers.
Yeah,
Like if you don't have something go quite viral, which I have not,
mm.
then uh, you have 200 followers going into it for your second year, and that's okay.
Well, I mean that's still a lot. I mean, when you think about it, it's
No, you're right. It is a lot, but
when you
if you're going into this as a brand new streamer,
yeah,
expecting to hit 1,000 in your first year,
yeah.
dream on.
Well, I used to tell people like that in radio classes. They stopped bringing me back to the college to talk to the radio people because I'd say, "What shift do you expect to work on?" They said, "Well, I won't work days." I go, "No, you're not going to work days for the first 5 years you're in radio. You probably work overnights." And they
Yeah,
quit,
you're
and
the new guy.
they
You get to
quit,
work whatever everyone else doesn't.
and they drop out of class, and the teacher wouldn't let them come back. I said, that's actually happened. They stopped bringing me to the class because I was having people drop out. But I don't want to blow smoke up anybody. If sometimes the stars do align, and you've got a perfect balance of talent and luck and
Yeah, talent, luck, exposure.
opportunity, and all of that comes together. Hard work, all of that comes together at the right time. But sometimes it just doesn't all come together at the right time. And I've found so many folks, such as yourself, that have a lot of talent, obviously, that
I
it
appreciate
just
that.
it just the opportunity hasn't been there yet for everything to explode. Um, and I want to encourage you and everybody else to keep going at it, because this is the audience that you're going for is not like old radio and television stations would go for a piece of the pie. You're going for a piece of the planet, which is a lot bigger than any pie. The potential audience is always expanding and is almost infinite.
Right.
So, I mean, just keep fighting. Do it. Enjoy
And I'll say,
yourself.
even to back up your point,
Yeah,
something like 95% of streamers quit
yeah,
by the time they hit their second year. And like, if you really want to do it, keep going.
yeah, yeah. If you want to enjoy yourself, if you're having fun with it, keep going with it. If you're not having fun with it, and just find something else to do, or change up a model, or do something. Change. Don't.
I'll drink to that. And by
Yeah,
that, I mean, I have a bottle of water on my desk.
that's all I can drink. So I guess
Fair
that's
enough.
that, after being replumbed a couple of times, I'm just lucky for that to go through at this age. But it's an absolute pleasure talking with you. Have you got any big plans coming up for the early part of this year?
Ooh, not as such. I have some stuff coming up for the summer
Mm,
that I'd like to do.
yeah.
Um, but for the rest of like the early year, no, not really.
Hmm.
In my own malicious sense of humor, I was planning on streaming Undertale as a max love run, and of course, love in Undertale stands for level of violence, so that's the
Yes.
run where you kill everyone. And that was going to be my Valentine's stream. But other than that, no, not really.
Oh, that's brutal and hilarious at the same time. Just how I like my movies, brutal and hilarious. Oh man, it's a real pleasure talking with you, and I hope we get you on again. You get some of those big projects coming up in the summer, and let me know, and we'll do some updates. Okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah. All of the links we've been able to find for Orpheus are going to be up in the description for this interview. Again, check out what Orpheus has got going on, and um, a very interesting person, and somebody that you need to follow and find out what they've got up their sleeve, because I imagine there's some things up there that we don't know about yet.
Oh, true. We didn't get into that I actually own a sword, that I know how to lockpick, my vast collection of Persona merchandise. I bought the
Oh,
game 5 times for myself personally. We haven't touched any of that.
oh my gosh! So you have to come back. You have to come back. We'll get
You'll
you
have to
back
come
again.
back.
Absolutely. Thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.